So back in 2025, Texas passed a whole series of constitutional amendments. Now, on the surface, they all sounded pretty good. Relief, reform, but the analysis we're breaking down today suggests they might have kicked off something much bigger, a really profound long-term crisis. We're talking about a self-reinforcing cycle that could seriously reshape the state for decades to come.
You know what's funny? A lot of these huge policy shifts, they don't start with some complicated idea. The foundation for this whole thing actually began with something pretty much everyone can agree on. Hey, we'd all like to pay lower taxes. And the promise? Oh, it was a good one. It was simple. Permanent property tax relief for Texans. The idea was to give people lasting, meaningful relief from property taxes, which, as you know, is a huge issue for homeowners and businesses all across the state. It's a really tough message to argue against. But that's what brings us to the big question in this explainer. What if the hidden costs, the structural changes happening behind the scenes, are way bigger than the savings you see up front? What if the point wasn't just to cut taxes, but to fundamentally change who actually holds power in Texas?
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts here. The very first stage of this cycle is all about how these amendments directly choke off the money that flows to your local communities. We're talking cities, counties, and maybe, most importantly, your local schools. So first, let's look at Proposition 13. This was one of the big ones. It jacked up the mandatory school district homestead exemption all the way to $140,000. Think about that. For every single house, that's $140,000 of its value that your local school district just can't tax. Gone.
And it didn't stop with homeowners. Then you had Proposition 9. This one carved out a massive new exemption for businesses, shielding $125,000 of their inventory from property taxes. Now, it was sold as helping small businesses, but the effect is it just eats away even more at the tax base that pays for police, for firefighters, for fixing the potholes on your street.
So this all sets up what the analysis calls the political trap. It's actually pretty clever in a way. State leaders in Austin, they get to do a victory lap, take all the credit for cutting your taxes. But when the money dries up back home, it's your local city council and your school board who are stuck with an impossible choice. Either raise tax rates on whatever's left to tax, or start cutting services people rely on. No matter what they do, they're the ones who have to face the public's anger for a problem that was created miles away in the state capitol.
And this is really the key takeaway, right? This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. When you systematically slash local revenue, the consequences start showing up, and fast, in your everyday life.
So what does that actually look like? Well, you start seeing fewer teachers, which means bigger class sizes for your kids. Those road repairs you've been waiting on, they get pushed back, again. You call 911, and maybe it takes just a little bit longer for the ambulance to get there. Your local library starts closing earlier, the parks don't look as good. And to just keep the basic stuff running, cities are forced to go deeper and deeper into debt.
Right, and this is the tipping point. This is where a manageable problem starts spiraling into a full-blown crisis. It's the moment the cycle really starts feeding on itself, creating what these analysts call the fiscal doom loop.
Here's exactly how it works. First, that state-mandated austerity forces those deep cuts we just talked about. Naturally, the quality of life starts to go down. I mean, good schools, safe streets, reliable services, that's why people want to live in a place. So when those things start to crumble, well, people with options, middle-class families, teachers, nurses, skilled workers, they start to leave. And when they leave, their tax dollars leave with them. That shrinks the local tax base even more, which puts even more financial stress on the city, forcing another, even more painful round of cuts. And just like that, the loop starts all over again.
And I really want to hammer this home. The term doom loop isn't just me being dramatic. It's the specific language the analysts use to describe this. They see it as a structural outcome, where state policies are almost engineered to create this downward spiral at the local level. Okay, so you've got this downward spiral going, but it gets worse. Other things get sucked into the vortex, basically throwing gasoline on the fire and making it spin even faster and harder to escape.
Two big things really speed up the crisis. First up, bond downgrades. When a city is in deep financial trouble, the big credit rating agencies on Wall Street notice. They downgrade the city's bonds, which is basically like your personal credit score getting tanked. All of a sudden, it costs way more for the city to borrow money for absolute essentials like fixing water pipes or bridges. Second, privatization. As public services start to fail, a vacuum is created, and private, for-profit companies are more than happy to step in and start running things like water systems, ambulance services, or even schools.
And this chart really breaks down the fundamental difference, the big trade-off you're making here. A public service, it's accountable to you, the voter, through your elected officials. Its whole purpose is the public good. A privatized service, it's accountable to its shareholders. Its motive is generating profit. And that usually means you end up with higher fees and a lot less transparency, sucking even more money out of the community and putting it into the pockets of investors.
And this brings us to what might be the most critical and honestly, the scariest part of this whole thing. This entire system isn't just a bad policy that you can vote out in the next election. It is being permanently locked into the state's most foundational document. One analysis had a killer line to describe this, calling the amendments a partisan manifesto cast in concrete. By embedding all of these fiscal handcuffs directly into the Texas Constitution, they are making them incredibly difficult to ever undo. They're designed to be permanent.
So how do you fix it? Well, that's the rub. It is a monumental task. Once something is in the state constitution, you can't just repeal it with a simple vote. To change it, you would need a 2/3 vote from both the Texas House and the Senate. And then it would have to go on a statewide ballot and be approved by a majority of all Texas voters. This isn't a lock you can pick, it's a wall you have to tear down.
And so it all comes down to this one really big question for the future of Texas. By locking in such a rigid top-down financial model, what is being given up? What is the ultimate price that Texas communities will have to pay for sacrificing their local control and their flexibility, all for the sake of ideological purity? It's a question the state is going to be answering for a very, very long time.